Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this month's Alma Q&A session. My name is Ali Verbovetskaya, and I am the Web and Mobile Systems Librarian in the Office of Library Services. Before we begin, I want to take care of some housekeeping. So to keep the line clear, all participants have been muted. If you have a question, you may ask it in the Zoom chat box. Questions that have been submitted through the anonymous question form have been noted and will be answered here. Similarly, questions submitted at the time of registration will also be answered here. And as a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be made available at its conclusion. If you don't get an email from us with the recording details, just check the Alma implementation LibGuide. All of the sessions are kept there. And that's it. So let's get started with today's session. What I'd like to do today is review basic Primo functionality, explain how OneSearch, which is what we call Primo at CUNY, will change when we migrate to Alma, share some search tips, and kind of remind everyone that we will be using OneSearch exclusively to look for local resources once we migrate to Alma. That is, Alma does not have its own OPAC, and OneSearch will fulfill that functionality. And then we will take questions from the group. As a reminder, we're ending at 11 o'clock, that it is a strict end time. So let's begin. As I mentioned, we'll be talking briefly about some of these topics. So let's get started. So Primo is a discovery platform. It is not a federated search. It provides discovery of library resources through a central index and a local index. It is a product from the company Ex Libris, which is the same company that Alma is provided by. And we are branding Primo as OneSearch at CUNY. We have had OneSearch at the CUNY libraries, goodness, for almost 5 years now, I think. It went live in the fall of 2014. And just to recap what this looks like. So when a user enters a query in OneSearch, they get results. And what's happening behind the scenes is that query is pinged against two indexes: the local index, which is our catalog records, everything in our institutional repository, JSTOR forum, local digital collections, LibGuides, if you've chosen to have that harvested, and so forth, just local things. And then the central index, which are all of the full text electronic resources that we have access to through OneSearch. This comes from all kinds of vendors, including ProQuest, Gale, Elsevier, HathiTrust, and so forth. So what does Primo Alma mean for us? So the Alma OPAC, since it doesn't have one, is Primo. Alma relies on a discovery service to be the front end. Alma is the back end system. It is what will be used to catalog items. It is how acquisitions will be handled. It is how books will be checked in and out. It's how e-resources will be managed. The front end of that will be Primo. It is OneSearch. This is how our users will search our local records. So in the past, integrated library systems such as Aleph came packaged with OPACs. For us, that was CUNY Plus, or as it was later rebranded, CUNY Catalog. It is now kind of known as Classic Catalog. Alma, which is a library services platform, does not include an OPAC and relies on a discovery platform for public access of local content. And I want to stress the fact that when we go live with Alma in August of 2020, only OneSearch will be used to discover local resources. Aleph and its OPAC will be decommissioned within 30 days of go live. This is something I have been saying, at least to the Public Services Committee, since we've gone live with Primo back again in fall of 2014, that when we move to Alma, we will no longer have an OPAC, and OneSearch will have to fulfill that role. And again, we're doing this session today to try to remind folks of this fact and to help you hopefully get acclimated to OneSearch if you haven't yet. And we are aware that not everyone has been using OneSearch, and we are doing what we can to help figure out where the issues lie and how we can help. So the Public Services Committee is designing a survey for all CUNY library staff in which they will try to learn what people can do in the catalog that they believe can't be done in OneSearch. And the results of the survey will be used to make changes to the OneSearch user interface and or create training material once we know what it is that people feel like they can't do in OneSearch. And that survey should be coming out next month, and if not in December, then January. It is a high priority for the Public Services Committee. And so life with Primo Alma will be actually better, we think, because it will have an enhanced user experience. And so I just want to show you what some of these things are. So it will mostly stay the same. OneSearch will behave the way it does now. It'll return results from the local catalog. It will return results from the central index for the electronic titles and so forth. But there will be some things that will be improved because Primo Alma together work better than Primo Aleph. So I think the biggest thing that people, at least in the access services, will be happy to see is that item information will be prominently displayed in OneSearch. So when you find an item in OneSearch and you click locations, the barcode for the item will be displayed, and you'll be able to copy and paste it, because I know that is a current issue with OneSearch right now, that you can get the barcode, but it can't copy it. It's a quirky thing where the barcode just kind of, you open it and it then closes. So anyway, the barcode, you'll be able to copy and paste it. You will be able to see the MARC record directly from Primo, from OneSearch. So let's take a look at what this looks like. This is a record in the University of Connecticut library. There is a link that will take you to display the source record, and it takes you to the MARC record. It is not the Primo normalized XML, it is the straight MARC record. So those of us who are able to read this will appreciate the ability to have this link directly in the OneSearch interface. We will also, because Alma is also an electronic resource management system and a link resolver, we will have embedded eJournal holdings information in OneSearch. So when we take a look at a record in an eJournal, we will see exactly which databases it's available in and the holdings information, which is not something we currently have. Right now, when you click on a full text link, it just takes you to that record. And if that link doesn't work, you have to go back and find the additional options for finding full text. And that will open up an SFX menu for you, which will list the databases in which it's available, that article. This will embed this information right into the OneSearch interface. And again, because Alma is an e-resource management system, it will also have an eJournal search built right into the OneSearch interface. So again, I'm going to University of Connecticut's library instance of OneSearch, and there is an eJournal search. And this is what it looks like. It looks a lot like what we're used to seeing in Serial Solutions. So if we look up Harvard Business Review, we will see results for Harvard Business Review. It will give us the print as well as electronic if that's available so we can take a look. And it displays that information in the UI. Additionally, we will also have an embedded citation search. So if this is something you've been using now through SFX, the citation linker, we will be able to use this in OneSearch as well. So again, going back to UConn, they have a find by citation, and it's right within the OneSearch UI, and you can enter information about an article if you have it. So students who have citations in their syllabi or are trying to chase citations based on research they've already acquired, they will be able to do that right from within OneSearch. Something else that we will have when we move to Alma in Primo is collections. So we will have custom collections. And again, I'm going back to University of Connecticut's Primo instance. And so what this will allow us to do is create custom collections of local resources. So for example, at UConn, they have new titles at UConn Library. They have UConn faculty authored books, so we can do something similar. This will just be a way for the libraries to locally decide collections that they want to feature through OneSearch, and this will be a way to browse them. So this is what it will look like. And then you can search within the collection, you can browse, and so forth. And that's mainly it for the enhancements. Again, everything else will remain the same. You will be able to search for items the way you've been looking for them. The filtering will work the same way, and so on. So in this portion, I want to talk about some tips and tricks for using OneSearch, some things that a lot of this may already be obvious to you, but I just want to reiterate it for everyone, and some other things may be new to you. In Primo, to perform a basic search, it works like most other search platforms. And you can use parentheses to group search items, quotation marks to search for exact phrases. You can use and, not, and or Boolean operators. They have to be in capital letters. And there are two wildcard characters. There's the question mark, which performs a single character wildcard search, and an asterisk, which returns results where the asterisk can be used to replace multiple characters. As I mentioned, the Boolean operators must be entered in uppercase letters, or else they are removed, and a search that includes all the phrases is performed. And wildcard characters cannot be placed at the beginning of a search term because they will just be ignored. So they have to be in at least the second character or elsewhere. And then just some things that I think might be interesting for folks. So if you are used to using the OPAC to search, to do a search in a local catalog, and then you want to do a search to see if anyone else has the particular item or more items on the topic, most libraries have this new search CUNY in their view in OneSearch. Now, this does not just take the keywords and perform the search in the CUNY-wide instance, but it lets you go into the CUNY-wide instance and perform a search. And then from the CUNY-wide instance, you can then just go back into the local one. It is not an ideal system, but it works for us now. And there are other libraries, let's take a look at Baruch's, that include a CUNY-wide search scope within their UI. So when you start typing in a keyword, you get options whether you want to search for it in the Baruch scope, in their reserves, or in all CUNY. And this will keep you within the Baruch's OneSearch instance, but the universe of results will be bigger. So instead of just including local Baruch results, it'll include all of the, in this case, Aleph records. And this is done on a library by library basis. So if your Public Services Committee representative has requested a CUNY-wide search scope, that is included in your OneSearch. If it is not, you can just click on New Search CUNY at the top and perform the search in the CUNY-wide instance. You will get different results because the CUNY-wide instance also includes all of the electronic resources. The local instance includes all of the e-resources available to that local institution, which should be more because the campuses license more titles than does the central office. So that is a way to do a CUNY-wide search. Next, something that I think is relevant to people is doing a call number search. And that is a browse search. So if you have a call number and you want to look it up, you click browse and you change the index. So you can browse by title, author, or subject, but you can also search by call number. And you hope to get some results. I don't know why it's not. Well, the screenshot proves this generally works. I'm not sure what's going on right now. I will take a look at that later. So again, a call number search is a browse for a call number. Something else that people have said that they would like to know how to do is to get the system number for a record. Oh, the browse wasn't working. Sorry, just figured this out because we're in the CUNY-wide view. If we take a look at, let's go to LaGuardia. Media browse. Okay, so this again is how the browse by call number works. Okay. Let's take a look. So if we click on permalink, this is how we can see it's telling us the source system that it's coming from. In this case, it is Aleph, CUNY Aleph, and then it ends in the, I believe it's 9-digit, maybe. No, it looks longer than 9, in the system number. So if you are looking for the system number of a record, this is how you would find it. You can just click permalink and you can see this record's system number, which in Primo also includes the system that it comes from. So if you were looking at a record that came from the central index, an e-resource that is not in the local catalog, you would see that it would give a brief, let's do, just to show you what that would look like. Just clicking on a random title. When we click on permalink, we could see it's coming from T and Duke. So presumably Duke is the name of the collection that it's coming from. And then there's a number that identifies it. But specifically, I was looking for one that came from Aleph, and in the future Alma, it will work similarly in the sense, again, you click permalink and you get the collection or the system that it comes in and its system number. Something else that came across my radar. Someone has mentioned that in the OPAC right now, they can perform an advanced search where they limit the results by item type, so books, for example, and a language. So for the Romance language librarian, wanted to return all books in Italian, for example. They didn't know how to do that in one search, but they know how to do that in the OPAC. And so we can do that in one search as well. What we can do is we can go to advanced search, and if we type CUNY Aleph, CUNY _ Aleph, this is, again, we saw this just now in the permalink, so this will limit the results to just those that include CUNY _ Aleph, which is the system name for records that come currently from Aleph. When we move to Alma, the string will be something else. And then we can add, well, in this case, we don't have more options than this, but we can do it this way too. We're going to get results that contain CUNY Aleph, and then we can limit by filter. So we can look for books, and we can limit by language. So if we wanted to do Spanish, so now we get results that come from Aleph that include the term CUNY _ Aleph, which is basically an empty search if you're just looking for items that come from Aleph. And we set a couple of filters for books and for Spanish. So now we get Aleph records where the language is Spanish and the item type is book. So that is a way to do that kind of search. I wanted to also mention how to apply multiple filters to your results. So if you wanted to look for, so we're looking for Spanish books, but if we also wanted French language books, if we hover over an option in a filter, we get this checkbox that appears. So we can click on that checkbox. And then we can do this for more. And we're not limited to just that filter. We can also, if we also now wanted to include dissertations. I don't know what this will bring us, but we can apply filters. And of course, this is not going to give us anything because it's looking for, it's doing an and search on all of this. So let's remove dissertations. Maybe we'll get something. Okay, so now we've applied books in Spanish, Italian, and French language. We can also exclude filters. So if we specifically want to exclude Dutch books, again, when we hover over a filter option, we see this crossed out check mark. So we can click that and it will exclude results that include items where the language is set to Dutch. We can also make filters persistent. So if just now you were doing a CUNY Aleph search, but you decide you don't, in this case, for example, you are not limited, maybe you don't want to limit yourself to just CUNY Aleph items. So you can do a different search, because right now, if you just change the search, this wipes out all of the filters that we set, and we are just starting from fresh. So what you can do is you can set books, you can do language, let's do English, we can apply these filters. And now if we want to make them persistent, when we hover over these active filters, we see a little lock. If we click on it, that will make this filter persistent, and we can do that for both. And so now they're persistent. So now if I do a search for turtles, these filters have already been applied. So we are now only getting results where the language is English and the item type is book. That only works for the current session, so they will not be persistent forever. After 30 minutes of inactivity, or if the user signs out, it will no longer have these filters be sticky like that. And you can also just reset them if you wanted to wipe them clean, except if they're persistent, and then you have to cancel the persistence. Sorry about that. And I just wanted to then briefly talk about course reserves, which is an option at select libraries. For those libraries that include their course reserves in OneSearch, you can search for them. So I know, for example, Baruch, we saw already they have a reserve scope. So if we search for calculus, and we can see the reserves option comes up, we can choose reserves. And this now returns only results from the Aleph course reserves collection for Baruch. If you have LibGuides e-reserves, they will also be returned here. If we're harvesting them in Primo, they will also be returned in the reserves scope. And then what's also nice about this, especially compared to the current OPAC ability, which if you've used the OPAC to search for course reserves, it's kind of a disaster. You can also filter by results. So if you know it's calculus and you're specifically looking for the book and you know your instructor is Huckins, you can look for calculus books just for that professor's classes. And again, right now, this is using Aleph course reserves. When we move to Alma, it will be Alma course reserves. To place requests, which you can't do on course reserve books, but let's just see, just to prove it. It asks you to sign in, right? It says, please sign in to see request options and to place requests. So we are going to sign in. And as expected, this is a reserve item, and I do not have, as most people don't have, the permission to request reserve books. So what we're seeing now is if you're signed in and see this message, request is not available. And similarly, up here next to request, there is no option. So let's take a look for something about turtles in the regular Baruch scope. We can limit it to books. We can limit it to currently on shelf. Okay. So this turtles of the United States and Canada, if I wanted to place a request. So there are two types of requests. There is a title level request, which is a clicks request. That means I want this title, I don't care which copy. And that you can do from here at the right below locations. It says request and deliver to, and then you just choose your pickup location and hit send request. If you wanted to place a hold on a specific copy, or if you wanted a particular copy to be sent to you, you can, if you click on that item, there's a deliver to option for each item. And you can have that sent somewhere else. So that is the two ways of placing requests in OneSearch. Use the generic deliver to up here, which the system will choose a copy and send it to you at your pickup location, or you click on a specific one and choose where to send that copy. Okay, so that's all that I have prepared, which puts us, I think, at exactly, yeah, it's 10:31. There are some questions that have already come through, so I'm just going to show them on the screen and try to address them as best I can. So I haven't actually prepared for these questions, so I'm going to be reading and trying to answer them for you on the fly. When searching for articles and I click on link to resource, it takes me to any of our existing databases. But there are instances where it pulls up a database that I'm not familiar with and cannot see the citation or how to download. When the article is initially opened and shows site, email, etc., does it automatically send the full text? So no. Let's do a search for, let's remove, I should have just done reset filters. So if you're looking at an electronic resource and you have these save site options, when you choose to email something, whether to yourself, to a colleague, to a classmate, it will send you the citation, a brief citation, and a link to this record in OneSearch. If you are going into the database, if you click the full text available and it takes you to, in this case, where is it? It's taken us to an EBSCO database. From within EBSCO, you can send the article to yourself, and whatever that database has options to do, in most cases, they do let you send the full text to yourself, then that is a way to do that. But within OneSearch, it only sends you a brief citation and a link back to this record in OneSearch. So I hope that answers that question. This one, I'm not sure what this is in reference to. So not clear on topic subject area, male, female. I have no idea what this was in reference to. Topic subject. So let's just take a look at this. So this filter for topic/subject that comes up in OneSearch uses whatever subjects it got from the record. For records that come in locally, it uses, for Alma, for example, it uses the mark 600, something hundred field to populate the topic subject filter. For records that come from the central index, it uses whatever the metadata was available there, and we cannot control that. So that is how this is populated. I hope that answers this question. And then, how do we narrow down a search to DVDs? So I don't know if we'll see anything on turtles. So let's, if we have the search on turtles, a resource type. Let's see. It does not look like we have anything. So this would be audio visual that we're looking for under, oh, there we go. Resource type audio visual. And again, in OneSearch, you get by default a blended list of results. So these come from Aleph, they come from LibGuides, they come from the central index. So audio visual will include physical as well as electronic titles. In this case, it appears that we do not have anything locally because it's not giving us only local items. So let's do a more generic search. Let's do, I don't know, Burns. And again, we're doing the audiovisual resource type. And the reason it is a audiovisual resource type is because, again, the results are blended. There is not a separate DVD resource type for records in the central index. There is not a separate video resource type for records that come from the central index. They're just in a generic audiovisual one. If we were to break this up into separate parts, we would need to teach our students to use that audiovisual may not return all of the results that are audiovisual. So in this case, we pick the audiovisual, and then we can do items currently on shelf, which does not guarantee that it'll be a DVD, but it will at least limit it to physical items in the audiovisual. And you can see, this is at least telling us that they're videos. And you can see by the call number, some are DVDs, some are VHSs. This is something that has come up frequently since we've gone live with Primo. So it is something we will continue to work on. If there is a way that we can make the audio-visual filter better so that we can limit it to just specific media results, we will try to do that. But at the moment, this is the kind of the best way to do it, is to search for your key term, apply the audio-visual filter, and then you can do items currently on shelf, or you can do that same trick as before, and let's put it in quotes now, is to put CUNY_Aleph. And this will return results where Ken Burns is mentioned, and also CUNY Aleph, which is the source system for the records. So this will return those results. This is not necessarily something you want to show students how to do, but it's something that you can do if you're not finding results the way you want to find them. So next question, is there a way to make the notes field, so it looks like the Z subfield of 852 field of the holdings record, to have it show up in OneSearch after we migrate to Alma? That is something, I believe we can do this now in OneSearch with Aleph records. I can't think of 852 subfield Z, but it's in, I think, the notes when you look at a record. So if you open up a local record and there you look at the item, there's information in here that I believe comes from the holdings record. And if it's something that we can do now with Aleph, we will definitely be able to do it in the future with Alma, but I will double check this, the answer to this question, and see what the status of that is. Next question, can you do command searches in OneSearch like the classic catalog option? And besides the tutorial, will there be a help option? Which is two questions, I guess, technically. Command searches in OneSearch are not possible. But what you will be able to do is do more advanced searches or reports in Alma. So on the back end, you will have more capability than you do now.
The command searches are actually searching Aleph indexes, so those indexes won't exist in Alma. That's why the CCL search will not work in when we're in Alma.
Right. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, and then besides the tutorial, will there be a help option? So I'm not sure if that means if this is considered a tutorial. So in addition to this session, as I mentioned, the Public Services Committee is doing a survey right now to try to understand what training needs there are with OneSearch. So
Oh,
try to
but
do
one,
that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. One other thing to remember though, with the CCL search, many patrons, not all, but many patrons don't use that. But staff who would use a CCL search will be able to search in Alma in ways that you cannot search in OneSearch.
Correct.
We'll learn that when we learn Alma, but the point is there'll be some type of advanced searching that staff will be able to still do. You'll just be doing it in the Alma screen.
Right. Thank you, Kevin. And let's see, with Primo, there is no help functionality in the interface. But with Alma, I know in the back office, there are help pages for everything in Alma. So I'm not sure what this question is exactly referring to. And again, Public Services Committee is doing a survey right now to try to understand what training needs there are, and they will be addressed. Okay, another question. It would be nice to understand how the subject filters work. How best to explain the relationship to the main keyword search. So again, the subjects that are populated in OneSearch, the filters, so this topic subject, comes from the metadata. Because it is looking at records from Aleph, it's looking for records from LibGuides, from JSTOR Forum, anything local that you have from institutional repository, as well as all of the hundreds of thousands of records that it's getting from the central index. This is where those subjects are coming from. So if you wanted to specifically see what subjects are associated with a particular record, you can do that if you if this is something you really wanted to do. When you open a record in OneSearch, this is another trick that I wasn't planning on showing you, but at the end of the URL, if you append ampersand, lowercase show, SHOW, capital P, lowercase nx equal true, you will get the PNX record, the Primo normalized XML record, which is the format that Primo puts this record into to make it searchable and displayable. So what we will see, there is a search section, which is horribly, you can barely see this. Am I still in search? So there are the subjects. And these are the searchable subjects. So in this case, baseball, United States, history, pictorial works. And this looks like it came from the Aleph system. So these look like the subjects that came from the 650 or something mark fields. Records that come from anything other than Aleph, we can take a look at those too. But go back to the results list. We can do that same thing to any of the records. Click on a record. We'll go to the end of the URL. Ampersand show, capital P, lowercase nx equals true. You can see the PNX record of any record. And so in this case, we can see the search, and I don't even, oh, there's the one subject. So you can see where the subjects are coming from. Each record that is discoverable in OneSearch has a Primo normalized XML record, and its subjects come from the metadata vendors. In the case of Aleph, those are the MARC records. In the case of the central index ones, it's, again, whatever the vendor has decided to make available. There's a question specific to Alma, not Primo. What will need to be shared with the campus public as a whole? So about the implementation, I think, about Alma. So this is, Alma will be something, it will be replacing Aleph, which again is used mainly by staff to carry out their day-to-day work. This is, again, how the technical services people will do acquisitions and cataloging. This is how access services staff will do patron work and circulation work and things like that. This is how e-resource librarians will activate electronic titles and manage their e-resources. The only thing that will change, the public, our students, our department faculty, the only thing that will change to them is the fact that the classic catalog will no longer be used. So they will have to start using OneSearch for that. Once we go live with Alma, there should not be anything. Kevin?
The only thing you might want to share, and this is something that will be talked about in the future in public services, is of course to let people know that there'll be a period of time where we won't be processing holds. Things like hold requests will themselves be on hold.
Right, and that's something that once we have a better timeline, we will share with the campuses. And you will be able to disseminate that locally.
But also at the same time, there's going to be some planning for it. So for example, libraries are talking about not having materials due during that cutover period. So the patrons will have a little bit longer loan period at the end of July because we're not doing transactions in Aleph or Alma. We're in transition. So there's going to be some allowance for that. But again, those are plans that they've been discussed and they'll be discussed further, of course, when the working group that's working on it comes to a final decision.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. And then I had another question that seemed to be specific to the optimization projects in Aleph. Seems more like a comment. I would send notices to chiefs to allay any worries they may have on the transition to Alma. So for those who are not aware, there are currently a dozen or so Aleph optimization projects that are either completed or in progress. And this is to help massage our data into a format that is more favorable for Alma. And that has been ongoing for definitely since May, since we signed the contract for Alma, but some of the projects have been going on for years now, ever since we knew that we were moving to some kind of system away from Aleph. So we in OLS and the Alma implementation team at CUNY, which includes those of us in OLS, as well as Steve Ovadia from LaGuardia, and all of the steering committee, the communications committee, and all of the Alma working groups. These projects are being worked on where they need to be worked on.
One other thing I would ask about, I would add about allaying fears or worries, is that we're encouraging libraries to have discussions internally about these projects so that everybody knows where they're at. Because the projects cut across departments. It's not one department that's responsible for all of the work. And so it's helpful for different departments to share with each other their progress internally within each library. So that's something we're encouraging people to do. And I'm sure that there'll be more of that as we get closer.
Okay. All right, thanks, Kevin. Sorry, someone has unmuted themselves. Is there a question from the audience? Okay. Okay, so these are all the questions that I had prior to the session. I had another question come in during the presentation through the anonymous question form. Is there a plan for communication about the sunset of the classic catalog? Will there be a notification on the page itself? so that users have a heads up. We're trying to figure out the best way to notify users on our campus of the change beyond email and social media. Thanks. So this is something that we will bring up definitely at the next Public Services Committee meeting, which is December 16th, I believe. But yes, the plan is to try to notify users of this within the CUNY catalog. Is to, right now, as it notes in there, is there's currently a message in the Classic catalog about OneSearch as more of a suggestion to go use this, but that will likely change into a more definitive, like this page will at some point, when we have a date, we'll fill that in, no longer be available. Please use OneSearch. I know some libraries have also just removed the links to the CUNY Plus, to the CUNY catalog from their library websites. I know some libraries have sent mass emails to their campuses notifying them of this fact. So again, the Public Services Committee will work on this. OLS will do what we can, and yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, and I would want to add to that those libraries who have already removed it from their webpage or have de-emphasized it with their patrons are actually doing everyone a big favor. I would use the example of Harvard went live and they still had people calling and complaining. Where's their version of the OPAC? Where'd it go? What happened to it? Even though they said it 100 million times, then let everyone know it's going away. People still just hung on to trying to use it because people are creatures of habit and they get used to things. So this is definitely something that you should be bringing to your public service people so that they can bring it to the Public Service Committee and come up with a plan that balances everybody's thoughts about what should be done.
Yes, and I know that the libraries that have just, as they said, ripped the Band-Aid off and just removed the links, they have not had much, if any, backlash from the community. And they themselves are now relying less and less on the catalog because now they are using OneSearch because that is what is on their website. So I have some questions that came in through the chat. So one question. Will the filter panel appear consistently on either the left or right side of the screen across CUNY? So this is in reference to in OneSearch, LaGuardia and Kingsborough have the filters on I can't even remember. I just know that they're the only two that are different. Okay. So most schools have it on the right. Two schools, LaGuardia and Kingsborough, have the filters on the left. This was something that I was hoping we could have consistent across the university, but it is just a matter of preference, whether it's on the left or right for the campus. The filters themselves behave the same way. And when the page is viewed on a mobile device or a tablet or something, the filters just kind of pop down to the bottom of the screen and you can expand that way. So it doesn't quite matter. So this is a decision that can be made locally at each library. And if you would like this changed, have your Public Services Committee rep email the CUNY service desk to open a work order to decide whether you want it to be on the left or right. And if you have strong feelings about this being consistent across the university, let your Public Services Committee representative know that too, because this is something that we talk about at the Public Services Committee meetings. There's a question about how do you create course reserves? Is it an easy process in Aleph? That is actually beyond the scope of this webinar, and we only have 5 minutes, so I'm not going to answer that now. And because we're moving away from Aleph, I don't know that it's worth trying to learn to do this right now. But we will be able to have course reserves as an option in Alma as well. So more details will be shared once that's available. There's a question, in the citation search, does it search for articles that are indexed that we do not have full text access to? Yes, I believe so. So if you have ever used the citation linker feature in SFX, this is basically what that is. I'm not sure. I will look into this though. Greg sent a link to Alma documentation that talks about displaying public notes. So I have brought that up on the screen. And so, yes, it looks like in addition to displaying the 852Z subfield and the holdings information of the items list page, Primo also displays this information under the holdings column on the holdings list page. So yes, to whoever asked about 852Z, yes, it will be displayed in Alma Primo. And then a final question. I heard mention earlier of access to an Alma screen. Will all staff have access to this screen? So just to reiterate, Alma will replace Aleph as well as SFX and any e-resource management tools, including Serial Solutions. It is for back office staff. So those who work with those systems now will have access to Alma. Our Alma contract is limited to a number of staff accounts for Alma. So not every staff member in every library will have access to Alma. But those who currently work in Aleph, in Serial Solutions 360, in SFX, will have access to it. So if it's not part of your regular everyday duties, you will not likely have access to Alma, but your colleagues will. So that was the last question that I have in the chat. I believe those were all the questions I received through the form. We have about 2 minutes left. If there are any other questions, now's a good time to ask them in the chat box. And if not, we can call it a day. And again, this session has been recorded. It will be made available later this week. I will send an email to QLibs with the link to the recording. And just as a reminder, recordings are also available on our Alma implementation guide, guides.cuny.edu/LSP implementation. Under events and other documentation and other resources, there's an event recordings page where you will find this and other recordings. Just one question came. If a reference librarian wants to do a command search, do they ask those with Alma access? So again, as Kevin mentioned, the command searches right now work in the catalog because of the way that the indexes work in Aleph. So there will not be a command search. There will be something like it in the Alma back office. And there will be reports, analytics that can be run in Alma as well. So yes, you will need to coordinate with your colleagues who do have access to Alma to run reports or specific searches that you are not able to do in OneSearch. Okay, all right, and so that's time now. Thank you everyone so much. I hope this has been informative. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thanks everyone. Bye.